Hey guys, it's Surgeon here. Welcome to my BA guide, or Barbarian Assault for those of you who don't know what BA stands for. This guide, we're not going to be going into super detail-oriented things like tips and tricks for certain roles. More or less, we're going to be talking about each role, what you need to do for each role, how to get started playing BA, basically go over the basics. So if your only goal really is to get a fighter torso, that's all you ever want to do BA for, then cool, this guide's going to be here for you to help you learn how to play BA at a very basic level. I plan on making more in-depth guides for each individual role because there are little tips and tricks that you can do in each role to make it more efficient. So when you start going for level 5, if your goal is to get the Elite Diaries completed, this way I'll put out those guides so you know the tips and tricks that most people use who grind BA for the pet and things like that. I personally love Barbarian Assault. It's one of my favorite mini games. I have level 5 in it, obviously, because I have the achievement cape. But I love this mini game. There's a lot of fun stuff to do in it. So with that all being said, let's jump into this. Alright, so starting off, the first thing you're going to want to do is complete the tutorial with Captain Kane. Now, as you see on the screen, I'm just going back through this. But what it involves is you talking to Captain Kane, and you go through each individual point, and he'll basically explain the entire mini game to you. This is actually a pretty good tutorial for just understanding the basics, but most people don't read through this or spend the time, or sometimes there's things that I mentioned in here that really aren't explained all that well. So you go through the entire tutorial, and he explains every role, the fact that it's a mini game that goes from 1 to 10 waves. Every wave gets progressively harder. The level of the monsters in it gets higher, as well as the HP that they all have gets higher as well. The amount of monsters that spawn gets higher as you get into the later waves. He talks about how the 10th wave actually decreases the amount of monsters, but there's the queen at the end of it, and that is the basically boss of this entire thing. He goes into talking about how to call, all these different things, all very important, but we'll be going into a little bit more detail about them and hopefully be able to explain a few more things. So let's move into that. Let's talk about what you're going to want to actually bring into the minigame with you. So, the only things you're not allowed to bring. You're not allowed to bring capes, arrows, runes, or pets. You're not allowed to bring any of those into the minigame. What you should be wearing, though, basically what you should be wearing is your best melee gear. However, if you're 80 defense or higher, you shouldn't be wearing any melee gear. You should actually be wearing graceful, like full graceful without the cape, and probably have like a shield on, and usually some kind of melee weapon. The reason for this, or you can bring a Din's Bulwark if you have it, but the reason for this is because when you have 80 defense, the monsters actually won't be hitting you all that much because of your defense level being so high, and you can actually wear the Graceful to make your mobility around the arena much better, so that way you can actually run for longer, because you'll actually see a clip. I actually run out of energy because I actually don't have my Graceful on. So wear full Graceful if you have the defense level that basically allows you to not get hit as much. But if you don't have that defense level, you're going to want to wear melee gear, and if you're attacking, you're going to want to wear melee gear regardless, so that way you can hit the monsters harder and clear the waves faster. So you figured out what you want to wear, and now let's figure out what we're going to do to actually build up a team. So your team's going to consist of 5 players. You can have 2 of one role, and then whatever role that you have 2 of, you have to have 1 person in each of the 3 remaining roles. In order to make a team, you're going to want to pick up a recruitment scroll from the table in any of the rooms, and to get people to get onto your team, all you're going to do is click on the scroll and then click on the person that you want to join your team. It'll pull up a menu saying what roles are available. They will click the role that they want. They will basically be like a trade window. You'll click accept, and then they will join on your team. Once you've actually built your team, you'll click on the ladder in any one of the rooms, and you'll proceed to start the wave. Before we start talking about the roles, let's talk about how to reset your wave. All you're going to do is right click on the door to wave 1 and click reset wave. The reason you'd want to do this is if you've got a very bad team, or a team that's not communicating well, or for whatever reason you have to leave in the middle of a wave, which please don't ever do that, but if you have to leave in the middle of a run, you need to reset back to wave 1. This is how you do it. So what are we going to be doing in this mini game? Well, there's 4 different roles. You have attacker, defender, healer, and collector. Each one of these roles has a specific task. For the attacker, your job is to kill the rangers and the fighters that spawn into the game. As a defender, your job is to kill the runners by using the traps on the eastern and western side of the arena, by using bait to lure them to those traps. As a healer, your job is to kill the healers for the monsters by using poison food on them, and to also make sure that your teammates don't die. And as a collector, your job is to pick up the eggs that the monsters drop that can be used to either stun them, poison them, or do AoE damage to not only the monster that you're shooting at, but also the monsters in a direct 1 square radius around them. Now these roles get a little bit complicated and each one's a little bit different, so I will be doing a little tidbit on each one of these roles. But so you know, each one of these roles has a counterpart, meaning there's one role that you are very closely related to. So the attacker and the collector, you're very close together, meaning that the attacker helps out the collector and the collector helps out the attacker. Pretty much if you're the attacker, you're going to be killing a lot of rangers and fighters, and every monster that dies is going to be dropping eggs. So the collector should be following around the attacker and staying very close to the attacker, since that's where most of the eggs are going to be dropping. So if the collector stays close to the attacker, they will be able to increase the amount of eggs that they're able to pick up. Defenders and healers work very closely together, mainly from the reason that they rely on each other to tell them what they need to be using on the ground. The defender needs to tell the healer what kind of food to use, and the healer needs to tell the defender what kind of bait they need to be laying down on the ground in order to lure the runners into their traps. Also, side note, the collector needs to tell the attacker what style of combat they need to use, and the attacker needs to tell the collector what kind of eggs they're able to pick up. I'll be going into this more detail when I talk about each individual role. The first role we're going to talk about, probably the most common role, is the attacker role. So what does the attacker do? They're going to be using either accurate, controlled, aggressive, and or defensive attack styles if they're meleeing, air, water, earth, or fire spells if they're maging, and bronze, iron, steel, and mithril ammo if they are ranging monsters. Their job, like I said, is to kill the fighters and the rangers so that way they don't damage the rest of your teammates. Now, like I said, you won't be able to bring runes and ammo into the actual mini game. So there's this little vending machine at the very start of the cave that you can pull, and it'll give you the ammo or the runes that you will need to perform those tasks. So this is typically the role that's going to have two of them in your team, at least to start off with. It'll eventually switch to 2 healers, but for the most part, you're pretty much going to be running 2 attackers. So generally, you're going to be one of the first ones done. But now what I'm going to do is actually show you guys a practice run of, or not really a practice run, but an example of me performing attacker and kind of walk you through what I'm doing. So this is the first time you're actually going to see the Barbarian Assault interface. If you look in the top right hand corner, it's going to show you a few things. You're going to see what wave you're on. There's going to be an ear icon, a mouth icon, and it's going to have a little horn icon. So the ear is whatever you hear, basically. And what that means is that's what you need to be listening for. That's whatever attack style, whatever egg, whatever you need to do, that's what it's going to be. So like as you see, it says accurate, iron, or water. That means I need to be using either an accurate attack style, iron ammo, or a water spell in order to deal damage. And then if you look, it changes about every 30 seconds. And that's what I'm constantly waiting for. So the tip is to actually keep your hand on F1 and F5 so that way you can switch between your inventory and your combat styles. The reason you want to do this is because if you look at the tab below, you'll see the mouth icon, and that's actually like what I need to be calling out to my collector. And so that will change every 30 seconds as well. So the horn is in your inventory, which if you right click, you'll see every option that you need to call out. So if you press F1 and you right click on your horn, it'll pull up every option. So you call that out. When you've called out the correct thing, it will actually turn to kind of this orangish yellow color, and that's when you know you've called out the right thing. You can call out the wrong thing, and that will continue to show that the mouth, whatever it is that you need to call out, is white. When it turns to that color, it means you're good. This changes every 30 seconds, so that's why you want to have your hands on F1 and F5 so you can quickly switch to your attack styles and switch back to your inventory. And if you notice, I also click off the monsters as soon as that happens, so that way I don't lose any points, because you do actually lose points if you use the wrong attack style. And finally, the last thing is that little horn icon. That just tells you whoever you're calling out for. Alright, we're going to talk about Defender, everyone's least favorite role usually. So as a Defender, you're going to be using either tofu, crackers, or worms to lure the Penance runners to the runner trap on the eastern or the western side of the cave. The bait that you're going to grab is actually from the vending machines in the very front. There's vending machines for every role, so you're going to grab them from the Defender vending machine, which is blue. And an important note is that each trap will kill 2 runners before you need to repair them. In order to repair them, there's a hammer and a log spawn towards the northern end of the cave. So depending on what wave you are on will affect how many logs you need to pick up. And you'll see this in the example of me doing the Defender role, is that based on which wave I'm on, I have to pick up more logs because I know how many runners I'm going to have. And in fact, I'm actually going to throw up a little diagram right here, and that's going to show you exactly how many runners you're going to have per wave, so you know how many logs you need to pick up as a minimum. Now, Only repair them when they have 0 charges left. Do not repair if it has 1 charge left. That doesn't make any sense. Unless you know that there's only 2 left and then you have 1 charge left on that trap, it does not make any sense for you to repair at 1 because you're basically wasting a log at that point. So only repair when it has 0 charges unless you know you only have 2 runners left in the cave. Alright, so let's look at me do Defender a little bit. So you're going to see I'm going to start off grabbing some loot or grabbing some bait, and then we're going to immediately run to the northeast. Now your traps are on the east and western side, like I said, so the first thing I'm going to do is run up to the trap and immediately put down like 2 or 3 of the bait that I'm going to be using. Then what you want to do is, as you're running up to whatever cave the runners are spawning out of, which they're actually spawning out of the second cave if you're counting from right to left, they spawn out of the second cave. So what you're going to do is drop some bait from your trap up to that cave front, and then once you've done that, it should start attracting the first runners, and you'll grab your hammer and you'll grab your logs at that point, so that way however many logs you're going to need, you can grab those so you can repair them throughout the run. Now as you see, like, the runners will get out of hand sometimes, and sometimes they'll abide really well. Like, there are some waves later on where I'm able to basically stockpile them all at the trap and just step off, repair it, 2 of them die, step off, repair them, 2 of them die, and sometimes that happens, and it's really good when that happens. But sometimes it gets out of hand, and you have to use the western trap as well. In an ideal world, that won't happen, but Defender is a very RNG role. Like, a lot of shit can happen, so you've really got to be on your toes and be able to run around. As you see, this is why you wear Graceful if you're 80 defense or higher. You do a lot of running if you're in any role besides Attacker. And on top of that, you also see me use whenever a runner gets too far away from the trap and they're too far to the south, what I'll do is I'll actually put down the wrong bait. So if it's requiring tofu, I'll put down like worms instead. And what that does is when the runners consume that wrong bait, they'll actually immediately recoil and walk back 5 steps to the north, which is really good if you're trying to get them to avoid running to the south anymore. So they'll start running to the north. This is a really handy tip to know. So if you're ever trying to pull them back, instead of using the correct bait, which will cause them to continue running forward, if you use the wrong bait, it will cause them to run backwards. So that's a little tip for you guys. As you can see, Defender's a very RNG role. There's a lot of stuff that can go on. The important thing is to know these different tips and tricks and how to actually how the runners actually operate. The only tip I will give you guys in this one, because it's not too advanced, is if you can step on the trap and lay down your bait on the trap and stand on top of that, you can actually get the runners to stop right before the trap, and then you can stockpile them all on the bait and then step off, step back on to let the runners run onto the actual trap, repair the trap, and then continue that cycle, and that's how you can burn through a lot of runners really quick. Also, if you put a bait on any square surrounding the trap, so not only on the trap, and a runner eats that, they will also die. So those are a couple tips when it comes to Defender. Okay, Healer. Pretty simple role. You're simply using either poison tofu, meat, or worms to poison the Penance healers that run around and heal the other Penance monsters. And the other thing that you're doing is you can fill your healing vial at the healing pool, and you'll use that to obviously heal your teammates. And you are also the only role that can actually drink from the healing pool to restore your own health. So the healer's a very simplistic role. It's more so about making sure that your teammates don't die, but at the same time you need to make sure that the other healers are dying as well. If the healers are the last thing up, that's fine as long as your team doesn't die. At the end of the day, you're ultimately responsible for your team's well-being, so focus on them if they start to dwindle in health. You'll usually end up running a second healer when you hit about wave 8 or 9 to help out with that, but if you've got a high-level healer, you can pretty much run one healer and be fine through the Queen. Alright, so let's talk about Healer. Basically what I'm going to do is the same thing that you start off with as the Defender. You're going to run to your vending machine, pick up what you need, and then run up to the northeast side just like the Defender would. Now, your healers are going to be spawning out of the first cave if you're counting from right to left, and all you're going to do is call out to your Defender what you need, and then pretty much you're going to start off by using, in the later wave, or in the earlier waves, like from 1 through 5, like through waves 1 through 5, you're pretty much going to be using 1 to 2 food on them, and then running away. Then what you can do is just spend the rest of your time healing. 1 to 2 food should kill them. It's a very simple role. There's not a whole lot that you really need to talk about healer. You'll see me use 1 or 2 food on the healers, and then grab my healing vial and start healing people. Ideally, if once you get into the later ways, what you'll start off doing before you run to the northeast, you'll get your food, you'll get your vial as well. You'll fill up your vial so you can heal people while you're killing everything else. But in these ways, like this is wave 2, I really don't need my healing vial. People are not going to die. So if you are afraid of people dying, then fill up your vial before you run and start killing the healers. Now Collector, the last role, and in my opinion, the most boring role out of any of these. Basically, your entire job is picking up either red, blue, or green eggs that drop from the monsters in the cave. That's it. Every monster in the cave drops 8 eggs, I believe. And they can be any color that's red, green, or blue. And based on whatever the attacker tells you to, that's what you gotta pick up. So, what do the eggs do? Well, the green eggs will do 1 poison damage to whatever creature it hits, blue eggs will stun enemies, and red eggs, these are probably the really only viable one, but red eggs can do up to 25% health damage to the enemy it hits and the surrounding enemies. So it can do a lot of damage, especially if you manage to get your if your fighters and rangers grouped up, if your attacker's a low combat level. So your red eggs can do a lot of damage, and you can also kill penance healers with penance runners with 2 red eggs, which is especially handy and what most people tend to use them for because defender's a difficult role. So that's what most people tend to use red eggs for, and that's really all your job is. Also, contrary to popular belief, using eggs does not take away from your point total as a collector. It doesn't affect it in any way, so use those fucking eggs. Alright, y'all ready for some mad collector content? There's really nothing that goes on in this clip. Literally, I follow around the attacker, which is what you want to do. You want to follow around the attacker because that's who's going to be dropping you the most eggs. And you're going to want to pick up as many eggs as you want. Obviously, it's wave 1. There's not a whole lot of eggs to begin with. And I'm already capped pretty much on collector points to where I don't really need to pick them up anymore. But if you're trying to maximize the amount of points that you want to get for collector, then your points are really based off of however many eggs you pick up. So pick up as many eggs as you can and make sure you're calling out to your attacker. Your attacker's got probably can take one of the longest if they're a low level because of how many things they have to kill. So make sure you're on top of your calling when you're a collector. It'll really aggravate your attacker because they're going to be constantly taking a lot of damage. So just make sure you're doing that. Other than that, there's not a lot that goes on in this clip. So if you want to watch me just kind of stand around and call, this is the clip for you. Alright, let's talk about wave 10, the Penance Queen. There's one thing I'm going to tell you. Remember Chad. It stands for Collector, Healer, Attacker, Defender, which is the order for making an Omega Egg. Pretty much the way that the 10th wave works is you'll go through a wave like normal, and the wave design is actually like wave 7, so you'll go through basically another wave 7, and then after that is done, the Penance Queen will spawn. Actually, she'll spawn in a certain amount of time, and if you don't kill everything in time, then you still have to deal with everything that's going on top of the queen. So you should be trying to get this shit done as quick as you can. But once the queen spawns, all you need to do is remember Chad. The collector will pick up the yellow eggs that the queen poops out, basically. The collector will give it to the healer, who will dip it into a poison pool. The attacker will attach spikes to the egg that you can collect off of plants, and the defender will dip it into lava, which is next to a poison pool. And then the defender will give it back to the collector, who will run and put it into an egg hopper. You need 8 eggs total if you do it the normal way in order to kill the queen. You can do it with less, but it requires a lot of coordination from the team, so I would not recommend trying to do this unless you actually have a full team of people who know what they're doing when it comes to Barbarian Assault, because if you mess up, you're going to have to go through the entire process again. Another strategy for this would be to have everyone run to the pool, especially if you're all lower levels besides the collector. That way it draws the queen in, and on top of that, it draws everyone into a closer spot, so the healers don't have to run as far to heal everybody up. Generally, if you have a team that is well adverse, like high defense levels, are able to kind of hold for themselves, then what you want to do is you actually want to stand side by side with the healer in front of a poison pool, the attacker in the middle, and a defender in front of the lava pool. And it basically creates this assembly line for you so you can easily make an Omega Egg, and the collector stands at the end of it or right behind the defender. The defender gives all the eggs to the collector, and the collector runs up to the egg hopper, and you kill the Penance Queen. It's a very simple fight as long as you all stay together, so that way your healers don't have to travel as far. But if you don't really understand the order of how the egg is made, then it can make things rather difficult. So there's this there's a lava pool, a poison pool, and then there's one square in the middle, and that's typically where you have people stand if they can they don't have to require a healer to keep them alive. And the reason for that is it keeps the egg construction very close together, so you don't have to travel as far, and it cuts down time. And when you're trying to run for multiple points, trying to get up to 500 points to get the queen pet, when you're trying to gamble for that, this little thing can save you a lot of time. So if you have a team that's pretty good and can really kind of hold a lot of defenses, then try this out. Have everyone stand at one square right next to each other, and then that way you can make this egg really quick. Alright, before we end this video, a couple quick tips about BA. 1. When you start a new wave, or when you finish your wave, you can simply right click on the ladder. The leader can simply right click on the ladder and click quick start. No one needs to leave and rejoin to clear that 60-second timer. If you right click the ladder and click quick start, you can actually join immediately. Another quick tip, your points are based off of whenever you do something wrong. The only role that's not like this is defender. If you use the wrong bait, you are not penalized. You are only penalized as the defender if a runner gets to the end of the cave. As an attacker, you're penalized if you use the wrong attack style. As a healer, you're penalized if you use the wrong food. And as a collector, you're penalized if you pick up the wrong egg. There is no penalty for using eggs, so I advise you to use those. Those are really the only quick tips I have, other than enjoy the game and have fun with it. BA is a fun minigame, in my opinion. A lot of people tend to hate it. I think it's because you get really terrible teams. But there's some stuff you can teach people, so when it comes to Omega Eggs, just be willing and helpful, and the game is fun. If you have a good team, or a team that at least knows what they're doing, the game is enjoyable. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. This video took a long time to put together. There's a lot of stuff in here. I really hope that you guys find it useful and at least teaches you the basics of how to play Barbarian Assault. At least teaches you how each role works and how to do the Penance Queen. Obviously, I didn't talk about the rewards because, well, the rewards are pretty self-explanatory. And you probably know why you're doing it if you're aiming for a reward anyway, so I'm not going to talk about it. But this guide, like I said, took a long time to put together. I do plan on doing a more in-depth guide on each of the roles, kind of talking about some of the little finite things, little minute things that you may not know about to make it more enjoyable for those of you who end up going for level 5 in every role. But quick shout out to the clan chat as well. Been sitting comfortably around 50 to 70 people in there at any one time, so thank you guys for hanging out in there. If you did enjoy this video, go ahead and give it a like. If you want to see more of my content, go ahead and subscribe. And if you want to leave me any feedback, leave it in the comment section below. Link to the Discord will also be in the description. And that's all I got for you guys. Whatever time of day it is, morning, evening, or night, you guys have a good one, whatever it is.